So guys, what if neglected Naruto was son of Serafall in High School movie? Serafall Leviathan had been through a lot of painful experiences. Fought in the Great War, check. Fought the children of the original Leviathan, check. Fought in a battle with Graphia Lucifuge that froze the underworld, check. In each of those battles she received nasty wounds. So yeah, she knew pain, but the pain she was experiencing at the moment was the worst. Right now she was being attacked on all three fronts. Emotionally, mentally, and physically, she was being forced to sit by while her queen fought and was currently losing against members of the old Satan faction. He was currently fighting 20, he originally winning. But the old Satan faction doesn't always fight fair, so two others joined the fight. Those two turned to 4, then 8, and so on until it reached 20, while her queen was strong, even he couldn't beat 20 ultimate class devils at once. Why doesn't she help? Well, she couldn't, she was in the middle of a hospital. Giving birth. Her queen, Minato Namikaze, a born low-class devil, turned out to be a gem. He was a genius with seals, she made him her queen, and they became lovers. She was expecting a child, but when she started giving birth an explosion went off in front of the hospital. Currently all of her peerage members were fighting, but they were heavily outnumbered. It would take a few minutes for Serafall to arrive with Graphia and Ajuka, but she was still giving birth, so she couldn't join the fight. When the battle started, they separated Minato from her peerage. They put him in an isolation field where he couldn't use his spells, and they have been battling. She winced and screamed as she felt another contraction, and the doctor screamed at her. Leviathan-sama, you're doing great. Just a little bit more. She had one pawn in the room with her as a last defense. She went back to pushing in an attempt to be finished with the painful thing known as childbirth. Minato. She was drawn by a scream and looked over only to be shocked and filled with dread. Over in the isolation barrier with a sword sticking out of his chest was Minato. He looked at her wide-eyed, but right before he collapsed he smiled at her. She was sad, upset, infuriated. She wanted to rampage, but a minute shake in the head by Minato calmed her. But she noticed something: he was still smiling. She followed his eyes and her heart melted. The doctor was holding a boy. The boy had the sea tree's black hair, but it was spiked like Minato's. His face looked like hers, but he had Minato's eyes. The doctor handed her the baby that she and Minato already named Naruto. She looked over at Minato, who was now on the ground, but his life was fading fast. She showed him Naruto while trying and failing to hold back her tears. When he hit the ground, a crimson light caught her attention. She looked and saw a battle-ready Serafall, Ajuka, and Beowulf. Serafall caught Minato's body and unleashed his power. The whole underworld felt the release of power of their leader. Graphia then arrived and took a defensive position in front of Serafall. Serafall suddenly felt the strain of childbirth catch up with her and she fell asleep. It had been 3 days. The underworld was torn. The population didn't know whether to be sad Minato died or happy Naruto was born. Serafall was the most popular Satan mainly due to her show, and since Minato occasionally appeared on the show and he built orphanages and other things for general welfare, he was a favorite amongst the low-class devils. While Serafall herself was sad and upset, she decided to continue her life, and after a whole day of crying she spent the next 2 getting herself familiar with the idea of being a mother. She had realized herself that her mourning was starting to affect her son. She wasn't paying much attention to him, only her situation. She decided to be better not for herself but her son. She would be the best mother ever seen. Who knows, he might grow up and like magical girls. Serafall-sama, she turned and was met face to face with Graphia Lucifuge. She was in her maid outfit with her usual stoic face on. Serafall-sama ordered me to escort you home. Both of the ladies knew what Serafall really meant. Make sure she's alright and talk to her if she needs it. Gray-chan, you should smile more. The strongest queen was surprised at first by the childishness in her voice. She had expecting Serafall to be in a shell, but that sounded like the old Leviathan. But Graphia also noticed the pain in her eyes, so she cracked a smile for the grieving mother. The reaction was almost instant. Serafall grabbed Graphia and started swinging her in the air before slowing down and looking her in the eye with a sad smile. He's really gone, isn't he, Gray-chan? The sorrow in her eyes overwhelmed Graphia's senses, who then hugged Serafall tightly like 2 sisters. Yes, he is, but at least he left behind Naruto-chan for you. Yay. That lazy no good left behind poor Naruto-chan and is making Leviathan do all the work. Serafall jumped around childishly as Graphia sweat dropped. And she's back. Leviathan-sama, it's time for us to go. Graphia motioned towards the door. When she turned to start walking, she was stopped by the Leviathan's voice. Graphia, thank you. Serafall got up to follow her. Time skip 9 years, Naruto 00000. The angry voice of the 9-year-old Sea-Tree clan heiress rang out. Sona ran through the Sea-Tree mansion chasing Naruto while blushing heavily. The boy in question was running away while laughing and barely keeping himself upright. You stole my first kiss. Satan, I didn't know you loved me that much. Naruto spoke in a cheery tone while blushing. He had been playing chess with Sona, and as a prize for beating her in chess she had to give him a kiss on the cheek, but when she leaned in he turned and got a kiss on the lips. It led to his aunt, who was more like a sister, chasing him through the halls of the mansion. He was wearing a white kimono with 9 magatama on it. He had received the kimono from Yusaka from the yokai in Kyoto. It was his birthday and the Gremories were coming for the party. As they ran through the house they passed smiling maids who giggled at the antics at the heiress and heir in line. If there was one thing Naruto Citri got from his mother, it was his unconditional love for Sona. They were brought from their musings when they heard a loud thud. They sighed as some went to clean up the mess the two created with their escapade. The maids who went to the site of the crash saw several knocked over pictures and Sona lecturing Naruto. Naruto, you stole my first kiss. Do you know how important that is? She was very frustrated and Naruto could do no better than just sitting there with an innocent smile on his face as he waited for Sona to release him. You are so annoying sometimes. Why can't you just act less like Oni-sama? Stop acting immature, you are embarrassing. Oh Satan, say it's not so. He spoke with a dramatic tone with a hand over his heart. Satan, I am just expressing my low. He stopped in the middle of his speech, untied himself, then ran past her, and for Sona that meant one of two things happened. Either Serafall was here but she wasn't glomped. That meant it was number 2, and she moved to the side and turned to see Naruto kneeling in front of a Kano. Rias knew, Queen. With his lips on her hand, she was smiling in amusement while Rias made her way past the pair with a pout on her face and went to Sona. My sweet love Akano-chan. What has persuaded such a graceful being such as yourself to come visit me? Era Naruto-sama, you flatter me. Akano spoke with a blush while she put her free hand on her cheek as she stared right at Rias, who looked back jealousy. Maybe I should visit more, but I don't want you to get tired of me. I could never get tired of a goddess such as you. There is not many who can look as stunning and perfect as you. As the two continued their dramatic conversation, Rias' aura began to pick up around her and Sona wisely took a step back. Akino, I would appreciate it if you didn't flirt with my Naru-kun, and Naru-kun, I would appreciate it if you didn't flirt with my queen. By the end the halls started shaking and Sona sighed. Why does he always rile her up when he sees Akino? Sona walked away to find her new queen, Tsubaki, before preparing for the party. After a few minutes, a lecture about fighting indoors. A lot of effort from the maids, and a few issues that arose at the main party for Naruto. We have gotten to the part of the day when he opens his gifts. From Sikvera he received a book on peerages, from Rias anime, Akino a very controversial kiss, and Sona a book on battle tactics, and from Ravel he received a 10-year planner. He took all gifts to be put in his room except for the planner that he decided to start on. The others watched as he put some scribbles down in his book. Naruto-kun. What are you putting in there? The question came from Sear's Lucifer as he watched with interest. It's my list of soon-to-be members of my harem, he responded cheerily, which got amused looks from most adults and sweat drops by the others. I knew I should have left him with Jiraiya. Serafall muttered, regretting her decision to let him around his grandfather alone. She then forced a smile on her face. Who is in it? First is Akino, then Rias, then Yusaka-chan, then Sikvera. All the girls mentioned blushed while the adults' sweat dropped at the name Yusaka, and last in my harem is Grafia-chan. He roared to the heavens and closed the book, not seeing the shocked looks on everyone's face, especially Grafia. He stood up and pointed at Sear's with fire burning in his eyes. Mark my words, Ni-tan, by the time I am grown up I'll have beat you around so badly that Grafia-chan will have to recognize my greatness. The room was deathly quiet at his announcement. That is until Sear's barked out in laughter. Era Naruto-kun, to try and steal my Grafia-chan from me. I'll have to step up my training so I won't lose to you then. Grafia, who was in her regular clothes as she had her day off, was blushing and couldn't decide whether to laugh or take his challenge seriously. I look forward to our fight, Naruto-kun, but I won't let you take my Grafia-chan from me. He finished by jumping at Grafia, who was still deciding whether to take his challenge serious or not, and knocking them both to the ground. But when he thought he was done, his mother came with a book in her hand that she handed to him. He saw a note on it and decided to read it aloud. It read, Dear child of mine, I wrote this book as my letters to you. I will give you this as a way to give you advice when I am not around. Minato Namikaze. He opened the first page and read a little before looking up with a confused look. He tilted his head and asked his mother, Ka-tan, what's a threesome? He asked with such innocence it was funny. It caused Serafall to spit out her drink and other adults stop what they were doing. Naru-chan, why do you want to know? Because the book says. Dear my child, the first thing my father taught me was the glories of, my favorite is the threesome. I remember when I talked Serafall into a threesome with the Greek goddess Aphrodite. First Serafall and Aphrodite were kissing before they went dow mmphhh. Naruto was stopped by a hand over his mouth and looked up to see a blushing Serafall. She had sweat dripping down her forehead. When he looked around he noticed the other adults were in a similar start and were looking incredibly nervous while the children looked confused and curious. Haha, that's enough, Naru-chan. Serafall let out another dry chuckle while thinking up a way to sat his curiosity. Threesome is when three people love each other a lot. He nodded and Serafall let out a sigh while mentally noting she needed to find where devils go after they die and beat the death out of Minato, then beat the life out of him. So can I have a threesome with Satan and you? Serafall blushed even more and shook her head while Searzex couldn't contain himself anymore and broke out laughing, leaving only Serafall and the still blushing Graphia not laughing. Soon the temperature dropped and everyone backed up fearfully from the angry Leviathan except for Naruto. I am going to find a way to bring that no good feminine man back to life so I can call him again for trying to corrupt my son. Serafall would walk around the rest of the day with an evil glint in her eyes and spent the next few days researching ways to bring people back from the dead. Time skipped 4 years. Sobs were heard coming from the room of Rias Gremory. If one were to enter they would see Rias with an annoyed look on her face. The reason she was annoyed? She was watching as Naruto Citri was sobbing with his head in her queen's breast as Akino looked at him with an amused smile. He started wailing comically and within a minute Rias' room was opened and in walked in Rias' mother Venelana with a curious look on her face. Why is Naruto-kun crying? He found out Graphia is pregnant. Rias spoke with irritation lacing her voice while Venelana raised an eyebrow. Ah yes, I remember, she was supposed to be the last member of your harem, right? She could see the minute nod that came from the boy in between the breast. If Akino, well maybe you should go after someone else then. The sobs stopped and he rose from Akino's breast and gained a thoughtful look. You're right. Let's see. I could try Lady Amaterasu, Lady Artemis, Lady Athena, Lady Freya. No wait, I know the perfect person. He was suddenly in front of Venelana on one knee and had hearts in his eyes. Venelana-sama, I am sorry it took me so long to notice, but you look absolutely stunning. Not a day over 20. To punctuate his words he kissed her hand. Her eyes glinted in amusement when she noticed Rias look at her, so she leaned over and whispered in his ear, if you want to get me in your harem you better prove yourself to me in a few years. With that she leaned up before a fan appeared in her hand before she popped him in the head and left. She wasn't serious, but that could lead to his drive getting even better than it is now. Plus it's always fun to see Rias so worked up. Time skipped 2 years. I am 15 and I still don't have a single member of my peerage. Now Ka-tan won't let me go to school in Kuo until I can find at least one peerage member. She doesn't even trust me enough to let me go peerage hunting alone. He looked towards the ground where he noticed Behemoth following him as he flew. Maybe I should have told her I was going to Europe. Why didn't I say Australia? She never would have worried if I said Australia. He was currently over Romania. This is where Rias found her, Bishop. He became thirsty so he flew down by a stream to get a drink. As he lowered himself he noticed Behemoth trying, and failing, to hide himself from Naruto. You would think she would use a more stealthy member to spy on a censor. As he continued to drink his water he suddenly stopped when he felt several dark auras, almost as dark as that of a devil. Must be a vampire. He shrugged and continued to drink. If they came to him he would just explain his case, and if they became aggressive Behemoth would back him up. When the presences entered the clearing he was met by a girl who looked a few years older than him, chased by other men, and she had a horrified look on her face. She continued running and he could hear the shouting from where he was. Valerie-sama, stop this madness, stop making this hard. Your powers are needed, come back. The woman kept running. When she reached a few feet in front of Naruto she started stuttering, obviously winded, but he could make out one word in her Romanian. Help. Naruto might not have wanted to get in someone else's business, but he didn't like a bunch of men forcing a girl to do anything. Naruto stood in front of her protectively as the men came closer. He saw the hidden Behemoth shifting his position and the men came to a stop before they shifted into a fighting stance. One walked forward and flashed him a smile before speaking. Young man, we would appreciate it if you gave Valerie-sama back. She belongs to us and she is needed. Instead of moving like he thought, Naruto lowered himself and summoned 2 kunai made of ice and held them reverse style. His eyes flashed with anger as he stared at the men. The vampire looked annoyed. Well, I can obviously see the lady doesn't want to head back. The vampires flared their aura, which Naruto replicated. His aura was massive and it engulfed that if the vampires, freezing them in place. When they regained their bearings they ran at him. He was forced to dodge a swipe of the lead one's claws by crouching low and flipped to the left to avoid a kick. He continued to flip and dance around the vampires' attacks in an attempt to test their power level and anger them. Once he saw the vampires lose their cool he decided to strike back. He rushed at them and right before he reached them he skidded on his knees while dragging his ice kunai on the ground leaving a thin trail of ice. To the surprise of the vampires and Behemoth the ice started to rise until it was 8 feet tall before spreading. The ice completely surrounded 2 of the vampires in the blink of an eye. When he turned to look at the cages he noticed the 2 vampires were slowing down and smirked. He looked around for the other vampire but suddenly felt something bore deeply into his arm. Looking down he saw the vampire's arm embedded in his arm and tearing it off. Naruto cried out in pain and dropped to his knees. Behemoth suddenly shot out and stood protectively in front of Naruto. Naruto though got back up and shot Behemoth a look that said stay out of it. A sneak attack? Or did you just sacrifice your comrades? What comrades? Those 2 were weaklings and them getting caught in you attack allowed me to rip this off. He held up Naruto's arm before sinking his fangs in it and drank all the blood in his arm. Oh, the son of Leviathan. Who cares though? The vampire smiled and ran to Naruto and swiped at him again, this time his face. BT before his swipe could reach the ice that formed a cage around his fellow vampires shot chains of ice out. The chains caught the vampire around the neck and tightened until he fell asleep before all the ice around the vampires turned into water and went into the stream. Naruto turned to face the girl he fought for to see her looking at his arm and chanting something. When she was done chanting Naruto was shocked when a golden cup came out from her hand and he felt magic course through his body before his arm regenerated. He looked back at her with wide eyes as she gave him a small smile. Who are you? And why were they chasing you? I am Valerie Tepes. She suddenly shot up and hugged Naruto. Thank you. They were guards that wanted to use me for my sacred gear. He nodded at her explanation. It was common for those with sacred gears to be forced to do things they didn't want, unfortunately. But now thanks to you I am free. Where will go now? It was a question filled both with hope and curiosity. If he could help her he might get her to join his peerage. I have a friend. I haven't seen him in a few years. She gained a sad look in her eyes, but Naruto on the other hand had his mind working overdrive. She's a vampire. She said her friend hasn't been around in the last few years. Could this be Gasper's friend? Valerie-chan, would your friend happen to be Gasper Vladdy? He saw her eyes widen and he gained a hopeful expression. Yes, that's him. Do you know where he is? Tears gathered in her eyes when he nodded. He's currently a devil in the peerage of my friend Rias. He saw happiness in her eyes. He was gonna ask her to join his peerage but he felt several magical signatures heading towards them. He looked at Behemoth and nodded. He grabbed Valerie. We have to get out of here. He brought out his wings and flew in the direction of the nearest devil-owned town, which was in Ukraine. After about 2 hours they landed right outside of Kiev. Valerie had actually fell asleep so he landed gently before taking her into a Gremory-owned hotel. He woke her up once he took her into a room. I hope the employees don't tell Gremory-sama about me bringing a girl into a hotel room. Valerie-chan, before I take you to see Gasper I wanted to ask you a question. Will you join my peerage? He noticed confusion in her eyes and decided to explain. The devils created the evil peace system to repopulate after the last Great War. Being in my peerage means you are my servant. But I don't like having servants so I treat you like you are part of my family. So what do you say? Valerie gained a thinking pose which looked kinda cute. If I joined your peerage could I still see Gasper-kun? I would never stop you from meeting him or staying with him. I promise on the name of the Citri clan of devils. His announcement led to her smiling and nodding. Well, lay down so we can start. Suddenly the door was kicked open and Serafall was standing there pointing at Valerie. Don't lay down to start anything. Stop trying to corrupt my Naruto-tan. Naruto's face went bright red at her implications. Ka-tan, what are you doing here? Behemoth-chan told me you were coming here so I came, and when I get here the manager tells me you brought a girl into a hotel room. I rushed here because I can't have my Naruto-tan losing his purity. Then I hear lay down so we can start. What do you have to say for yourselves? Naruto facepalmed at his mother before correcting her assumption of their situation. Serafall had the decency to look sheepish before taking her leave with a flare. Now let's get started. Naruto laid her on the bed before pulling out his queen, peace. I order, in my name Naruto Citri, you, Valerie Tepes, I, resurrect you back to this soil as my servant, and have you reborn as a devil, you, my queen, be delighted with your new life. The room glowed as the queen, peace sunk into her chest and rewrite her human DNA into devil. So let me get this straight, you went to Romania, ran into a vampire who just happened to have a Longinus. One of the 3 holy relics nonetheless, but also happened to be childhood friends with my bishop. Which led to her joining your peerage. Naruto nodded to Ria's summary. He was currently in the Gremory mansion because he wanted to reunite Valerie and Gasper as quick as possible. Gasper was currently sealed away so he went with Rias to her room so they could get reacquainted. Next time you find a Longinus user let them join my peerage.
You always get Luke. Rias was cut off by the door opening. She turned and was met with Akeno, her queen, standing in the doorway.
Suddenly Naruto was in front of Akeno on a knee holding her hand. My lovely Akeno-chan, how glorious it is that you grace us with your otherworldly beauty. Naruto started kissing her hand and Akeno started giggling at the son of Leviathan. Rias on the other hand was behind the two, had her aura surrounding her. Era Naruto-sama. How about we head to my room and continue our fun? Akeno spoke in a sultry tone while looking straight at Rias. As much as I would love to join you and bask in your beauty, I cannot. I have to leave for the taping of Miracle Leviathan. It's my last appearance as the Sage of Six Paths for a while, since I am going to school with you guys now. He stood and gave Akeno a kiss on the cheek, causing Rias to fume even more before he went over and did the same for her, calming her a little bit. As he closed the door to leave, he heard an explosion and the sound of fighting. Sighing, he walked down the halls of the Gremory mansion towards the main room. He saw Graphia and walked over to her. Graphia-chan, I have to leave now. I might not be back tonight, so in about an hour or two can you send my queen to the Sea-Tree mansion so I can get her situated? Very well, Naruto-sama. The silver-haired maid spoke in a monotonous voice. She turned to make her leave before she felt a pair of lips on her cheeks. When they were removed, she turned to see Naruto activating his teleportation magic. See you later, Graphia-chan. With that he left. Graphia turned to go back to doing her job and no one heard her murmur, at least he isn't clingy like his mother. Naru-tan, don't forget to call and watch over Satan. Naruto was standing in front of his mother Serafall Leviathan as she very childishly went over her goodbye speech. He was leaving to go to school, Kuo Academy, with Akeno, Rias, and Sona. He was at Leviathan's castle. He had switched from his white kimono to street clothes, while Sona and Rias were bringing their peerages who would live with them. Naruto only had Valerie, but she was going to remain sealed with the ever-shy Gasper in his sealed-off room, so they would be in houses. He would live in a studio apartment. At least for now. He was pretty sure Searzex was going to do something that he didn't want to his house. As his mother brought him out of his musings by pulling him into a hug, he went wide-eyed when he felt tears dripping on his shirt.
I know that you have grown up, but I can't but see you as my baby. You were my first child and possibly my only. As much as I trust you to do the right thing, you are my kid, so I always worry. I might not see you for months, but remember to call, okay? He felt her wipe her eyes and look at him with a proud smile on her face. He gave her a smile of his own. Her voice and face went back to that of her childish side. This might be our best mother-son moment since you used your ice for the first time, or your first time on Miracle Leviathan. Maybe we should shoot our show in the human world next. Naruto deadpanned. How do you go from serious to speaking about the show that fast?
He gave her a hug before activating his magic circle. He saw her wink and shoot a star made of ice at him from her staff. Valerie-chan, hurry up. We might miss the festival. Naruto whined for what seemed to be the 1000th time. He was currently in his house. It was the day before school started and he was going to a festival in town. He was dressed in a light blue kimono with a tan sash wrapped around his waist. Naruto-kun, the affectionate suffix filled him with joy. He hated when she tried to call him san or sama. Why are we going to a festival anyway? She didn't want to go. It wasn't that she didn't like Naruto, but she was playing with Gasper when Naruto told her they were going to the festival. She walked out of the bathroom in the house. She had her blonde hair done in a bun with a few strands sticking out. Her kimono was white with flower petals that were the same red as her eyes. Her sash was red as well, and if Naruto had to say anything, it was beautiful. Naruto-kun, Naruto-kun, Naruto-kun. She was snapping her fingers in his face to get a response. Yay, yes, Valerie-chan, he responded with a small blush on his face. I asked, why do I even have to go to the festival?
Oh, that. I am pretty sure you said you didn't go out much when you were still with the vampires, right? She nodded, a bit hesitant. Her time with the Teps was a sore spot for her. Well, I am gonna take you out so you can see what you were missing. Besides, it's the spring festival. This is seen as a time of rebirth, renewal, and a time of new beginnings. Besides, what a better way to show you how much I appreciate you than with a date. As he finished, he suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the festival. Fortunately, for Valerie at least, he never noticed the blush that was on her face.
Line break, time skip 2 years. Naruto was bored out of his mind. He was currently in class with Sona, Rias, Akeno, and Tsubaki. He knew all the content and would probably ace any test he was given. The problem was Sona was in this class. If he fell asleep, she would make him take remedial class. As much as he loved spending time with her, he didn't like how serious she was. He tried to be sneaky one time and cast an illusion over himself, but she noticed and made him study the whole night. Suffice to say, he has stayed awake all classes since. They were currently second-year students. All 5 of them were at the top of their class and were idols of the school. Rias and Akeno were the sophisticated 2 great Oni-samas, while Sona and Tsubaki were the student body president and vice president. He was just Naruto. No special titles, just Naruto, or at least he wished that was the case. He hated when they tried to call him Prince or Naruto-sama. It made him feel like a prick. This was the last week before the final exams and they left for a short spring break before the new year. He was planning on going peerage hunting. Sona and Rias both claimed the 2 students with sacred gears at the school, so he was left looking in another area for members. The only problem was he had promised to play the Sage of Six Paths for a new movie for Miracle Leviathan during the break, so he would be hunting in the underworld. Maybe if he was lucky he could get a devil from the extra houses who wanted to work with him. He was brought from his musings when the bell rang signaling the end of class, and school by extension. Rias and Akeno would go to the old school building for the occult research club, Sona and Tsubaki had student council, and Naruto would go to his afternoon job. One might ask, why does the son of Leviathan have to work? Naruto would simply reply, it keeps me occupied until Sotan can come home. Yep. Naruto still had a nearly unhealthy amount of love for his aunt. He wasn't allowed to show it at school because Sona would throw a fit. Naruto Shitori and Sona Shitori were nephew and aunt. The whole school knew, but with the way Sona treated Naruto at school just made her popularity rise. She was called fair because she treated him like she treated any other student at school. It also helped that she would discipline him if he got too Naruto-ish. Naruto began to walk to go to work when Sona stopped him. He began to perk up until Sona deflated him by calling him Naruto-san. His world felt like it crashed. The other students watched as he frowned at Sona. On the inside though he was crying. You seem to space out in class. He suddenly started sweating. Maybe you could not understand and are in need of remedial classes. No, Sona ch. He started only to be stopped by a hard glare. It's almost like she's piercing into my soul, but she's just so cute. Sona-san, I understood perfectly fine. Are you sure? Exams are coming up and I would hate to see you fail because you spaced out in class. Off to the side, Akeno and Rias were giggling at the duo's antics. It happened every time around test time. Sona would never admit it, but this was her way of worrying for him. She's such a tsundere when it comes to him and Serafall-sama. Rias' eyes glinted in amusement before she and Akeno left for the clubroom, leaving the aunt and nephew to bicker. Studying is important, especially during exam tea. She was cut off as Naruto suddenly grabbed his bag and ran. No way am I dealing with that. Sitting through regular class is enough. Line break, time skip, 2 weeks, finally done with exams. Naruto spoke as he walked home. He was by himself as usual. Sona had paperwork to get done since it was the end of the school year and she needed to prepare for her campaign next year. Rias, on the other hand, was going to her club to finish her last report on the occult before her deadline. He, on the other hand, was going home to start preparing for his trip to the underworld for the spring break. Valerie would go with him this time, unlike last year. Speaking of Valerie, her Gasper moved in with him. Yep, it surprised him too. He fell asleep and awoke to a 4-story house. Valerie and Gasper were moved in with him and Gasper was once again put in a sealed room. Not that he was complaining. Turns out his grandparents, maternal, wanted him to move into a house befitting the son of Leviathan. Luckily his mother was able to get them to tone it down. Instead of his house being a castle that dwarfed all of Kuo, it was instead a 4-story house with 10 bedrooms, a few bathrooms, a full-size hot spring, a giant garden, an indoor pool, and 2 basements. Gasper still dressed like a girl too, so he bought him and Valerie the same thing, just in a smaller size. Valerie was going to go to the underworld with him. She still hadn't met his mother. Strange considering he absolutely adored his mother, especially her antics, so she would get to go behind scenes and watch the filming of Miracle Leviathan. Return of the Sage. It was the most anticipated movie in the underworld in years, since the release of Sage of Six Paths. The Priestess Storm, his first film as the main hero. Rias is still mad he got Akeno a spot in his movie and not her. As he neared his home he paid more attention to his surroundings after feeling what felt like holy energy before it disappeared, and he continued walking.
Behind a lamppost, a tall woman with the wings of a fallen angel let out a sigh in relief when he walked away, believing he was totally oblivious to her presence. It would not do her and the others any good if they were caught this early on in their plan, by the devils. Line break. Naruto Serafall shot like a rocket towards her son as soon as she saw him.
Cut. The director yelled at the top of his lungs with a twitching eye, but Serafall paid him no attention. Are you okay? How's school? Do you have any new friends? She launched questions like a military machine gun. Naruto could not keep up as the questions were coming too fast and Serafall was choking him in the hug. Serafall-sama, I think you're suffocating him. The director spoke with a sweat drop. He might be mad at the interruption, but he didn't need one of his stars to be suffocated. When Serafall released him, he fell to the ground with XS for eyes, and Serafall was comically shaking him to wake him up. Naruto-tan. Naruto-tan. Maybe I should give him a kiss, it always woke him up as a kid. Serafall kept mumbling over Naruto even though everyone could see he was still breathing, just passed out. When she got up, she carried him with magic to one of the couches, with an overwhelmed Valerie behind them. When Serafall saw her, she leaned in and with a pout looked her up and down. Is she trying to be intimidating? Was the common thought of everyone watching their transaction. You are Naruto-tan's queen. Huh. It was more of a statement than a question, but her voice sounded more defensive than anything. Valerie merely nodded at the strange devil. Everyone facefaulted when Serafall grabbed Naruto by the head and woke him up before hugging his head tightly in her breast while pouting and glaring at the confused queen. Well, no matter who you are, you aren't taking away my Naruto-tan. Stare. Stare. Leviathan-sama, you're suffocating him again. The director's voice cut in, stopping the staring contest between the Leviathan and the still confused queen. True to his word, Naruto's face was blue and he was passed out again.
Ah, Naruto-tan. Everyone's sweat dropped as they watched the current Leviathan fuss over her son, that she knocked out.
Then again, it's always fun when they are together. The director couldn't help but smile at the nostalgic scene before him. Leviathan-sama, he's not dead. Let's try and get done with these next few shots while he sleeps. The director looked at her cautiously. After all, you aren't supposed to separate a worried mother from her child, especially since this mother could call him thousands of times before he could even blink. Serafall looked between Naruto and the director. This went on for a minute and the crew was on the edge of their seats. Would she pick her son or the film? She leaned down towards Naruto and most of the crew thought they would have a long break, but that thought process stopped when she kissed his forehead. Big boys need their sleep. She ran back to the set to finish her scenes before Naruto would join in. Line break. Naruto was taking a walk in the underworld through the forest in Seatree territory. He had just passed a small forest he used to train in when he was a kid. He had been in the underworld for hours and decided to walk around after his shoot, an involuntary nap. He wanted to come here because he hasn't come since he was a kid. He used to come here every day, but not to just train. There was this black cat that would sit and watch him, so he would bring food for it. But one day it stopped showing up and soon so did he. He would come here after stories his grandfather told him. He still remembered his favorite. Flashback. Arrow. Gigi, tell me a story. A 5-year-old Naruto pleaded using the thrice-damned godforsaken puppy eye jutsu. The victim was his grandfather. His grandfather was a tall man, 6 tall. He had white spiky hair that went down to his mid-back. He had red markings on his face and always wore a headband that says oil in kanji. This was Jiraiya, the father of Minato Namikaze, husband of Tsunade Senju, one of the users, and first known master of the Twilight Healing Sacred Gear, as well as a devil reincarnated by Lord Seatree, and a Nurarihyon. He was the really great-grandfather of the former supreme commander of the Nura clan that rules the eastern yokai in Japan. He lived long because Tsunade revived him as a devil when she became high class. He fell in love with his wife because of Tsunade's assets, but in the end his love for her turned true. Very well, Gaki. Which one? Oh, maybe I should tell you how I wooed grandma. Naruto nodded. Well, it started about 2,000 years ago. I saw her boobs. Jiraiya started drooling only to go flying into the ground after being punched by Tsunade. Stop trying to corrupt my grandson. Tsunade had a tick mark and her eye was twitching furiously. I am going to make lunch. His mother is already complaining about him trying to woo the maids. She muttered the last part as she walked into the kitchen. Jiraiya appeared out of thin air and calmly walked back to the couch. Now where was I? Ah yes, I saw him and decided I was in love with her. It was love at first sight, but she assumed I was a no-good yokai who only cared for opai and leeching off other people. I was right about both of those. Thank you, Haim, for the input. But yes, I followed her. She wouldn't talk to me for anything other than to tell me to leave her alone. So I did what was best for both of us and left with the promise of coming back for her. So I did. We didn't meet for another 5 years, but she was still lovely and single, so I followed her again. When I found her next, she was trapped in a cave with 4 fallen angels trying to bring it down. She was injured and they were planning on calling her, so I released my pressure and all of them stopped their attacks. They turned to me slowly and fearfully, and one of them asked, "Who A or YYU?" And I properly responded by saying I am the gallant Jiraiya who has come for his bride. They were completely scared. I think one even shit himself. Stop cursing around him, you perverted sack of bones, Tsunade yelled from the kitchen. It's like she hears everything, Jiraiya muttered in a whisper. That's because I do, troublesome woman. Do you want to sleep on the couch and I don't give you a treat for the next year? No, Haim, anything but that. Then behave. Naruto was cracking up. His grandparents were always strange and it was funny, but he wondered what this treat that his grandmother used to threaten his grandfather. Now back to the story. One of the braver Fallons created a light spear and threw it. But the moment they felt my pressure they were already caught in my fear. They couldn't see me, just my illusions, and I promptly cut all down. Following your grandmother's rescue she fell in love with me, and about 1,000 years later we had you dad, who in turn rescued your mother from a kidnapping or something and fell in love with her, and a few hundred years later had you. Maybe you'll continue the tradition of rescuing stubborn women and marrying them. Flashback end. He was only a quarter yokai and 75% devil, so he never really trained in chakra nut. His grandfather said his yokai power alone would be as strong as an ultimate class devil if he trained in and mastered them because of his devil blood augmenting its powers. He just never decided to increase his abilities. After all, being a Satan was not his dream. He was going to help Sona with her school and create a peace throughout the world like his grandfather said he wanted to. He was brought from his reminiscing by the sound of rustling leaves. He looked in the direction of the rustling and was surprised when a miniature dragon appeared. It was grumbling, but Naruto could understand everything it was saying. Only minute things like father and comparisons. The dragon seemed to notice Naruto because it stopped. It grew in size until it was around 9 to 10 meters tall. He suddenly looked sharp as it turned to Naruto. Who are you? Did Two-san send you to find me? The dragon asked angrily. When Naruto was about to correct him, a fireball flew his way. He was forced to jump back to dodge. Well, tell them to leave me the hell alone. When Naruto didn't move, the dragon flew straight at him. The dragon punched forward towards Naruto but came up with nothing but air as Naruto had sidestepped the attack. I don't know who this Two-san is, so stop attacking me, Naruto yelled, trying to get control of the situation. Don't lie to me, he sent you. The dragon breathed in, preparing to shoot a fireball. Shit. Naruto started chanting a water spell. If a fireball was launched from here, a forest fire might start and there was a village nearby. The dragon launched a fireball towards Naruto. Naruto watched as the inferno got closer before launching a spell that hit the all in the middle, stopping its march but didn't completely put it out, causing it to fall to the ground, setting some grass on fire. Naruto quickly put out the fire only to feel a fireball hit his back and launch him forward. Naruto shakenly got up, and as he did he started leaking his power. He was furious. This dragon nearly started a fire that could have killed thousands and didn't care. Naruto's pressure got higher and heavier. The dragon froze for a moment. Over in the village the pressure washed over them. The whole town ground to a standstill. The pressure felt warm to them, but they knew for a fact that was not the case. They could see the frost building around them showing the temperature drop. That meant either Serafall or Naruto was very angry. But despite them seeing the frost they didn't even feel cold. But they could feel the pressure. It was warm and protective but aggressive. The townspeople didn't know whether to feel worried or safe, so they did their best to go back to their day. Back in the forest the dragon was still frozen in shock. He could see the ice forming all around him. It nearly encompassed the whole clearing. Even some of his scales were forming frost. The worst part though was the pressure. It was suffocating, it felt angry, and worst of all, it was large. He was sure most of the underworld could feel it. Then he looked into the eyes of his opponent. They were cold, calculating, and focused. It was as if he was looking into the eyes of Minato Namikaze, the former queen of Serafall Leviathan. That was when he remembered. He was in sea-tree territory. His opponent used ice and water-based attacks. The outfit he was wearing was the same as the Sage of Six Paths, and the hair was the same as the Leviathan. His opponent was the son of the current Leviathan and Minato Namikaze. His opponent was Naruto Sea-tree. Naruto-sama, I am sorry. I didn't recognize you. The dragon bowed. He prostrated and never rose his head. What is your name, dragon? Naruto spoke with contained anger. Be Bova Tannen, third son of the former Dragon King Tannen. The dragon, still prostrating, spoke fearfully. He was powerful, but he knew that you should not anger the child of a Satan. Please forgive me, I was angry and I wasn't thinking properly. I see, but you still people in danger. You came on sea-tree property and nearly destroyed a forest and village in your rage. Bova was really sweating. He was afraid that he would be punished, but suddenly the pressure went away and he slowly raised his head. He looked straight into Naruto's eyes. Okay, you look sorry, but you should still apologize to the village people. His tone of voice switched. He was no longer speaking as though he would attack Bova at any minute. Will Naruto-sama. Bova sounded even more terrified, no doubt by how creepy his personality flip was. Mama, do you have to call me Naruto-sama? Can't you just call me Naruto? My apologies, Naruto-sam. Naruto, it's just I was taught to be respectful to high-class devils. He saw Naruto nod. Well, don't forget to apologize to the villagers, Yaen. Wait, Naruto. Naruto stopped talking and retracted his wings, looking expectantly at Bova. Bova bowed again, confusing Naruto. Please allow me to join your peerage. Naruto was just standing there as if he didn't hear him. I am sorry, can you repeat yourself? I don't think I heard you correctly. I asked if I could join your peerage. Why? I am a dragon, but you still forced me to prostrate, so I wish to serve as your servant. Time skip 1 week and that's how I got my new rook. Naruto finished recounting the story of how he gained Bova to Sona, Rias, Tsubaki, Akeno, and Rias. That's nice, but maybe we could discuss this more when we aren't bathing, Sona replied with agitation. If you would look around, Tsubaki was red-faced while Rias and Akeno had smiles on their faces. They were in the hot springs in Sona's house. When they got in, Naruto appeared in the room clad in nothing but a towel and started telling them how he got Bova while occasionally staring at Rias and Akeno. Valerie was with him and she was just as red as Tsubaki, as she was in a towel as well. What do you mean, Satan? Akeno-chan and Rias-chan don't mind. Tsubaki-chan has a crush on Kiba-kun, so I am not staring at her, and we've showered together all the time when we were younger. There is no part of your body I've not seen, he replied nonchalantly with a shrug of the shoulders. Tsubaki turned redder, while Rias and Akeno shifted their bodies to give him a better view. Sona on the other hand started shaking violently. She was starting to only see red and launched a magic attack that hit Naruto in the face with the bathwater. Naruto was slumped over a pipe while mumbling about mean Satan. He jumped up again and glomped Sona. Satan, it's the last day of spring break. I just wanted to spend my time with you. Why do you try and deny my love for you? Sona punched him into a spot in between Rias and Akeno. Idiot nephew. Rias and Akeno grabbed both his arms and put them in between their breast. Issei Hyoto was many things, but lucky with the ladies, not so much. Despite his dreams of being a harem king, he never expected to be in this situation. In front of Issei stood a girl. She had long black hair and large assets. The reason Issei was caught off guard was what he thought he heard her say. I am sorry, what? Issei cleaned his ears thinking he heard wrong. Please go out with me. The girl Amano Yuma bowed her head down as if embarrassed, but if you looked close enough you would see a small smirk on her face. Line break. Rias was sitting on the couch in Naruto's house. Akeno was next to her while Sona and Naruto were at the table playing a game of chess. Suddenly a light came from the corner of the room and out stepped Kaneko Tiju Rias. Night. She slowly walked to the seat across from Rias and sat quietly and pulled out sweets and started to eat them. While this usually would be normal, Kaneko had a task given to her by Rias and her arrival could only mean one thing.
So the crows have decided to show their faces. How interesting. The voice was that of Naruto. While he normally would be cheerful and childish, he was sounding serious. The only thing was he was not taking the fallen angel threat serious. No, the reason he was serious was the chess game he was playing with Sona. I wonder what their goal is. Well, hopefully it's not too boring.
Yes, I hope this brings some excitement to Kuo. It's been boring ever since Sona stopped our weekly baseball games, Rias responded with a smirk. I wouldn't have had to stop it if you didn't use magic and stop breaking the bats. Besides, you two should take this threat more seriously. This incident could spark a war. Sona didn't look up, but Rias could almost feel the glare. But they knew she was right. If one of them were to slip up and get hurt, no doubt Azazel would have some explaining to do. Well, either way, this means the two of you will have to reincarnate those two you have claimed. Checkmate, Satan. Sona was left gaping like a fish. She has never lost chess to anyone but Naruto and Rias, but she has never beaten Naruto. This really was hurting her pride. Don't forget you have to hang out with me this weekend for 6 hours and you can't complain, got it? She could do nothing but nod. This really was confusing her how he was always winning. Now, if you don't mind, I have a few contracts I must get to. With that he left, leaving a deflated Sona, a giggling Akeno and Rias, and a silent Kaneko. Line break. There is something I want to do to celebrate our first date. Can you listen to my wish? W. What is the W wish you want? Will you die for me? A. That is, sorry. Can you repeat that again? I think there's something wrong with my ears. Will you die for me? Suddenly wings with feathers as black as midnight sprouted from her back. She started laughing like a madwoman. Then a buzzing noise reaches Issei's ears. It's coming from her hand. When he looks, he sees a spear. She raised her arm and with a whoosh the spear was launched at Issei. When he looked down, the spear had already pierced his stomach. You were a threat to us. If you want to blame someone, blame God. He's the one that gave you the sacred gear. Sacred what? Issei brought his hand to his stomach and then back to his face. It was coated in the crimson liquid known as blood. The blood was a crimson that reminded him of something he saw almost every day. The crimson hair of the beauty known as Rias Gremory. It's just like her hair. Man, I really am going to die. If only I got to grope her boobs. Suddenly a light came from his pocket. When he looked down, he saw the leaflet he received earlier that day. As he continued his dying thoughts, the light of the leaflet grew brighter and brighter and Rias Gremory appeared from the light. Issei could do nothing but stare at her as if she was some kind of angel. Issei himself couldn't see who it was. All he knew was they had crimson red hair. His vision was so blurry that he didn't even trust his eyes. So you were the one who called me, she spoke in a melodious voice. Looks like you are dying. Your wound. Oh my. Looks like something interesting is happening to you. So it's you. This truly is interesting. She's laughing as if she found something interesting. If you are dying, then I'll pick it up. Your life, that is. From now, you will live for me. With that he blacked out. Naruto came out from behind the trees when she finished reincarnating him. Era. You had such a lovely script prepared. Maybe I should put you in a movie. His comment made her blush, but he couldn't see it since her back was toward him. Well, now you have another peerage member. I guess if you train him well enough he could help you with your problem. He noticed her nod, but she didn't take her focus away from healing him and cleaning the area before any humans noticed all the blood. I still don't see why you just don't let me handle him. But okay, have it your way. Good night, Rias-chan, I'll see you at school tomorrow. With that he left and returned to his house, but not before looking at the prone form of Issei. Things really will be fun around here. Baka. This is a matter of my pride as a devil, plus I can't have you doing all the fighting for me. Besides, my cute little pawn will do big things in the future. Line break. The next day Issei was walking home. After part of a porn session with his friends Matsuda and Motohama, he left because he felt something weird was happening with his body and it was confusing him, but he suddenly stopped. He felt as if someone was watching him. He turned and there was a man in a suit with a top hat staring at him. He felt his own body tremble as the man narrowed his gaze. The man spoke to him, but Issei was scared by him and didn't care for his words before taking off. Trying to run away. Who is your master? It must be a person with a very low rank or with a weird hobby to choose this place as a territory. So, who is your master? He turned and entered a park. It was the same park that he went to with Yuma. The man he was running from him was behind him. Did you think I'd let you escape? That's why lowly beings are a pain to handle. Wings sprouted from the monk's back and Issei suddenly felt a wave of deja vu hit him. Tell me the name of your master. It's a hindrance to get bothered by your kind. For that, we will. Wait. Are you a stray? If you have no master, then that will explain the worried expression on your face. The man summoned a spear made of light in his hand. If you are a stray, then there will be problem if I call you. The man threw the spear and it pierced Issei through the stomach. Issei felt pain. It was unlike anything he felt before. Blood started coming out from his mouth and he fell to his knees. Oh, I thought that would be enough to call you, but I guess your body is tougher than I imagined. But don't worry, the next one will call you. The man created another spear and threw it at Issei. Issei closed his eyes expecting death but was surprised when nothing came. He opened his eyes and noticed the spear that was about to call him was frozen in ice inches away from his face. He heard the man in the suit growl, and the sound of shoes hitting the ground. Suddenly a masculine but childish voice came from behind him. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't hit my friend's cute little pawn. Issei lost consciousness and hit the ground after that and didn't hear anything else, not knowing the identity of his rescuer. The ice. You must be the son of Leviathan. My name is Naruto Citri Fallen Angel Kun. This little one is not a stray, and this town is under my surveillance. I would not get in the way, unless you wish to be destroyed. The voice of Naruto was sharp and made the fallen recoil a little bit. I will say the same to you. My name is Danashik. I pray that we never meet again, son of Leviathan. The now named Danashik flew off but couldn't help but shiver at the powerful aura he felt. Line break. My name is Hyodo Issei. What's your name? My name is Asia Argento. Please call me Asia. Then, Asia-san, let's meet again. Yes. Issei-san, I will definitely come and see you. This isn't good. Rias turned to Naruto, who is with her watching Issei from afar. He is getting attached to her. Unless the fallen angels attack again, we can't get involved with them. And if they are planning on doing what I think they're doing, this won't be good for him. He spoke with a frown marring his face. What do you think they're planning? I thought they were just randomly moving. Rias looked thoughtful as if looking for a pattern. I've read about something like this before. Fallen angels gather at a church and get a person with a sacred gear. They then perform a ritual to take out the sacred gear of a person. It's usually those who are acting alone perform the ritual. Rias almost instantly put the pieces together. She obviously has a sacred gear with healing powers. So I guess she is the sacrifice. If Issei gets attached and they call her, that was not a good thought. Maybe I'll just have to let him get attached. It could be a nice stepping stone to get him used to battle. Besides, she could be a good bishop. Well, who knows what will happen. Naruto caught the look in her eyes, then nodded and sighed. He got the message. Don't interfere in this. Rias and Naruto nodded to each other before teleporting away. Line break. All devils have two sins, a primary sin and a secondary. Rias was pride with greed as a secondary. Sona was envy with greed as a secondary. Sear's Lucifer was pride with greed as a secondary. Serafall Leviathan was wrath with lust as a secondary. Minato Namikaze was lust with pride as a secondary. Naruto on the other hand was lust with wrath as a secondary. The secondary sin grows in around the 13th birthday. A devil receives their sins from their family most times. Some devils grow into a sin. Serafall was one such case. She gained her wrath after the Great War and lust after meeting Minato towards the end of the Great War when she was in her late teens. Although devils could be influenced by all seven, their top two were just more prominent and the other five are on an equal footing buried deep in their being. A devil could go their whole life without drawing on the other sins. A devil whose second sin is triggered is barely in control of themselves.
The primary sin is the easiest to control. All it takes is a little training and it is hard for a devil to lose control of the primary sin. The secondary is more tricky. It takes years, sometimes decades, to control it, since it is in its deeper part of the being. Before it is controlled, a devil is considered young and maturing. Once a devil can control one's secondary sin, they are considered fully mature, and gained a boost in control of magic.
Rias was currently getting greedy, but it was understandable. Here she had support-type sacred gear that was emotionally attached to her pawn. And she was effectively kidnapped, making her pawn want to go rescue her. She was enticed and now she could barely control her greed. She first got a dragon-type sacred gear and now could get a rare support-type. She could almost feel a shiver go down her spine. But right now what was important was to discourage Issei until she could finish her planning. So far she knew the major components, but she was lost on when to attack. Naruto foretold the ritual happening tonight. She could storm in right now and face them during their preparations for the ritual, or tonight when at least one fallen would be out of the fight. While the fallen were significantly weaker than her, this wasn't her fight. She wanted to get a gauge of Issei's base skull, while they were already low. Nearly zero. She still wanted to get a better gauge, and this could spark some growth. She had told Naruto to not interfere with Issei, so he was sitting back, but he claimed he wanted to storm the church. At first she assumed he wanted to reincarnate a fallen when they begged for life, but she threw that out when she remembered his feelings towards Akeno. He knew her distrust to fallens, and even though he plans to get rid of it, he said he needed the right setting, so for now she would assume he just wanted to have some fun. Currently she was sitting back watching Issei go out with Asia. He promised to show her around, and Rias had no doubt that the fallen would come for Asia. She would watch to make sure the fallen couldn't call him. She saw the fallen appear, so she readied herself to interfere if necessary. Issei stood protectively in front of the nun and prepared for a battle. As he prepared for a fight, the fallen created a light spear and threw it straight into Issei's gut. She was prepared to go and get him, but she watched fascinated as the nun started healing him with her sacred gear. She saw him get up and look towards the retreating form of the fallen and nun. She turned to take her leave. Line break. Rias was scolding Issei. The pawn was trying to argue his case back to his king. But she was not listening. Hiding in the trees, Naruto had to smirk. The kid's got balls. I like him already. The mayhem we can cause together. As he mentally chuckled evilly, he didn't hear the rest of the conversation. He then returned his attention to the conversation going on in the room. I've got an urgent thing to do now. Akeno and I will go out for a bit. B. Bucko. I haven't finished talking. Rias put her index finger on Issei's lips, effectively shutting him up. Issei. There are a couple of things I need to tell you. First one, you think that a pawn is a weak piece, right? Am I right? He nodded quietly to her question. That's a big misunderstanding. Pawn has a special ability that no other pieces have. That ability is the promotion. Curiosity ran across Issei's face. His confused face looked so idiotically hilarious that Naruto had to bite on his tongue so he would not give himself away. Just like the actual chess game, pawn can change into other classes if they reach the opponent's base. They are able to promote to any other piece besides the king piece. Issei, when you step foot in the location I acknowledge as enemy's base, you are able to change into any piece besides the king. The most excited look appeared on his face. He looked as if he was about to do something stupid. If the look on his face was any indication, it was a good thing they knew what idiotic thing he was doing. Since it hasn't been that long since you became a devil, there are restrictions, so it's probably still impossible for you to be promoted to the ultimate piece. A queen. But you could change to other classes, if you wish strongly for promotion, within your heart. Then there will be a change in your ability. He saw Issei perk up as if he just discovered a hidden gold mine. Also, one more thing, it's about the sacred gear. When you use your sacred gear, Just remember this. Desire. Sacred gear is driven with the power of desire, and it also determines the power for it as well. Even though you are a devil, your will to desire hasn't been lost. The stronger you desire, the stronger your sacred gear will respond to. One last thing you should never forget. Eyes, even a pawn, can take down the king. This is basic in chess. This truth also applies for the devil's chess pieces. You can become stronger. With her piece said, Rias and Akeno left the room. Naruto took that as his cue and hopped off the branch he was on. He walked around to the entrance of the old school building and met up with Akeno and Rias. Rias-chan, you ready? The smile on all of their faces grew and they brought out their wings and flew off. Things really are getting interesting. I hope they can fight. Line break era such scary crows. Naruto makes a playful comment as the fallen struggle against his chains made from ice. You know, the harder you struggle the tighter they get. As if reacting to his words, the chains tightened, causing the fallen to gasp for air as the chain wouldn't budge from around their necks. Danashik glared heavily at Naruto. Mama Don-chan, the girl's sweat dropped and Danashik's eye twitched. I warned you what would happen if you continued to encroach on my territory. He felt a shiver g down his spine. I mean Rias-chan's territory. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Now Fallen, what do you have to say for yourselves? She was met with looks of defiance and glares. Seeing this, she sighed and shook her head. She started raising her power and conjured some balls of destruction. Nothing? Very well, be gone. She launched the balls of destruction at the three Fallen. She turned and looked at a moaning Akeno and a daydreaming Naruto looking in between the two of them. She sweat dropped at their quirks. Naruto with his lust and Akeno's sadism. Now let's go see what my cute little pawn is doing. Akeno and Rias turned and saw Naruto bringing his wings back out. You're not coming with us? Rias asked with a tilt of the head. No. This is your pawn's trial. It's a peerage matter. I have no plans of interfering more than this. Besides, if Satan sees I am not home, she might freak out. Especially on a school night. Rias had to stifle a chuckle at that. Even though they lived in two separate houses, Sona seemed to always know when Naruto was not in his house. They didn't know how, as she didn't tell, but that was until Naruto saw her familiar checking up on him at night around 11:30 every night they weren't together. I shall take my leave now. Oh, and don't tell Issei about me. I want to make my introduction fun. With that he laughed evilly and left. I think he's going to scar Issei for life. Rias had to shiver at the thought of Naruto's version of fun. The thought of Naruto's fun is so enticing. Akeno thought with a shiver, but her shiver was entirely different from Rias. Line break. Naruto entered the old school building heading to the orc room only to stop when he felt two presences. Normally he would just walk in, but Issei was in there and he didn't have time to finish his introduction. So he stuck to waiting for Issei to leave. He could tell Rias noticed his presence because she paused momentarily in her speech, but she recovered without Issei catching on. Bucko? If there is the same number of evil pieces as in chess itself, then it's possible to get 7 other pawns besides me, right? So will there be a day when another pawn besides me will join us? The perverted boy asked to his master. No, my only pawn is you, Issei. Naruto could almost imagine what thoughts were going through the boy's mind. It was probably along the line of this as a confession. There's a saying like this in the world of chess: queens have a value of 9 pawns. Rooks have a value of 5 pawns, knights and bishops have a value of 3 pawns each. Like this, there are standard values that also apply to the evil pieces. A similar phenomenon happens to those reincarnated. If there are those who can only be reincarnated with 2 knight pieces, then there are also those who need 2 rook pieces to be reincarnated. There's also the compatibility with the pieces as well. You can't use 2 separate pieces to give them different roles, so it's important to think how to use the pieces. Once you use it, devils won't be given a new, evil pieces. How is that related to me? Issei, I used all of the pawn pieces when I resurrected you. If I hadn't, I couldn't have made you into a devil. I didn't know what made you worth 8 at first, but now I know it's the Longinus class sacred gear you possess. It is only the second Longinus I've seen. She muttered the last part, her voice full of jealousy, and Naruto couldn't help but silently laugh. What is a Longinus? Rainier said something similar. I didn't explain it, did I? It was worded like a question, but it was a statement. A Longinus is a sacred gear that at its most powerful has the potential and power to call a god. Her words sunk in. Issei was quiet for a moment as if he was in awe. Wait, did you just say second? Issei's voice filled with confusing and it almost made Naruto laugh out loud. Who is it? Don't worry about it for now. Issei, she got his attention after her dismissal of his question. There are several devils without sacred gears that are stronger than you. He deflated at that comment. So do your best and aim to be the top pawn in the underworld. The strongest pawn. He heard the cushions on the couch shift, giving him the picture of someone getting up. This is a good luck charm. He heard a kissing sound and nearly bust down the door. He was barely controlling himself from running in the room. He heard Asia come out and they continued to talk for a few minutes before Issei and Asia came out. When they did come out, Naruto hid his presence and made sure to not get noticed. He entered the room and saw Rias sitting by herself. He sat across from her and continued to look at her, but he suddenly jumped on her and cried anime tears, "Rias-chan, how could you cheat on me?" Rias rolled her eyes as rivers started to fall from his eyes. She roughly grabbed his cheek and pulled while causing him to stand up. "OWWWWWW. Wise-chan stuopthwis hawerts," he whined through her pinch. "I would if you started acting befitting of me." She watched him calm down before letting him go. "Now if you would let me explain, I didn't kiss his lips if that's what you're scared of." He suddenly jumped her again. "You do still love me." He tried to kiss her, but before his lips could touch her face he was grabbed from behind and pulled into another's grasp. Era, you're awfully excited today. Maybe I could help you work off that energy." He immediately knew it was Akano. Her words were seductive, eliciting a shiver from Naruto. When he turned to face her though, his head was once again grabbed and he was pulled back again. This time by Rias. Above his head he could feel the lightning flowing between the two. Seeing where this was going, he got out of the hold, and while the two were preoccupied he escaped. Nothing was said as Naruto teleported and arrived back at his house and was met with the sight of Bova Tannen doing yoga with a TV program right in front of Naruto's arrival area. He had blue sweatbands around his head and wrist, and was in a disfigured-looking crow pose. The room was awkward. After a minute of no one talking and Bova not changing his position, Naruto left and Bova went back to his yoga. When he left he was met with a naked Valerie coming out the bath. Both of their cheeks turned red and Naruto looked away. His thought process: I might have a healthy appreciation, but I am not a pervert. Arrow Gigi is enough of a pervert.
But behind him the heads of his grandfather and father were floating. Gaki, if you look you will get to see the best of the world in the form of Oppai. Whereas his dad was more, if you look now then you are one step closer to giving me grandchildren. Either way they weren't a help. In the end Naruto braved himself to walk through.
"Excuse me, trying to get through, sorry." He walked past with barely an ounce of control in him. Why did my queen have to be a chick that is hot but doesn't know what hot is? He was true, Valerie only knew hot as temperature and pink. Not being out in society as a teen really didn't help either. Now that he thought about it, there was a lot he kept on forgetting to teach Valerie. Well, he might as well do it now. Mwahahahahahahaha. Naruto-kun, you're maniacally laughing again. Valerie's voice cut through his ears and stopped his laugh. TCH, damn thin walls. Issei was having a glorious dream. He was surrounded by his friends and family. He was in a tuxedo and was standing next to a chapel. In front of him there was Rias Gremory. She was in wedding dress that barely hid her breast from him. While standing there he could do nothing more than imagine the wedding night. He let a perverted expression marred his face. Suddenly the dream was cut off and everyone around him disappeared, and standing next to him was Giant Dragon. Line break. So let me get this straight. Issei had a dream about you. A nod was the response. That was interrupted by the dragon in his sacred gear. Another nod was given. I don't know whether to feel bad for Issei that his dream was interrupted or thankful of the dragon for stopping it. Who knows what the dream was about? The speaker Naruto was smacked in the back of the head by a red-faced Rias. That's strange though. Rias looked at him expectantly, which he caught. I had a weird dream last night too. Oh, what was it about? Rias looked up curiously as this seemed to be an interesting tale. So when I was born this giant fox came out of nowhere and killed my parents. And weirdest thing, I had a different mother. Instead of Ka-tan it was that member of Tu San's harem, Kushina-chan. Rias nodded slowly. This was not what she was expecting. So it skipped like 13 years and it showed this girl. She was stalking me. Then it skipped again. This time me and that stalker chick were married. It was strange, and kind of fucked up. He was then chastised by Rias for cursing. Yeah. Now back to the dream. We had kids, and this is where it became a nightmare. My firstborn was a spoiled brat who's stepping out of line. This boy, he spoke in an exasperated tone. He told my dream self he was lucky his parents died. Then my dream self did nothing about it. He just let his son disrespect him and the memory of his parents. That's time out and punishment at the least. I called Tu San a perverted freak when I learned some of the things in that diary, and Ka-tan spanked me with magic. He was waving his hands in the air to get his irritation and annoyance through to her. Rias could only look on amused as Naruto was trying to explain his frustration in the dream. He was mad that he married his stalker and his son knew no discipline. It was so cute how he looked like he was ready to explode, but she was getting tired of his antics. Naruto-kun. He stopped mid-rant and looked at her. While that's an interesting story, Shouldn't you focus on introducing yourself to my newer pieces? I could really use your help with training. She really did want his help. If anyone could motivate Issei into training, it was Naruto. His words would motivate anyone, and he mastered the teaching method of practical learning. Oh, I already have it planned for today. It will be a moment Issei never forgets. Mwahahahahaha. Rias could only sweat drop in fear for her, Pawn, and his psyche, but before she could question him, the door was opened by Issei. Before he could react, a giant pie slammed into his face and a bunch of screams, crashes and the sound of gears turning all echoed throughout the old school building. She did not want to know what happened to him. After all, only one person has come out of Naruto's greeting and hasn't been scarred. Suddenly a sneeze sounded through the room. Akano came out of the back of the orc with tea. Was someone thinking about me? When she received no answer, she just continued to place the tea down for Rias and Naruto. If you looked closely, you would see a euphoric look on her face. Naruto's greetings just tickle me. She put a hand to her face and a blush spread out, allowing Rias and Naruto to understand what she was thinking. Rias responded with a sweat drop and Naruto a smirk. Kiba and Kaneko emerged through the door with a battered Issei and a worried-looking Asia. Issei was covered in fake scales and had a fake dragon tail and wings sticking out of his back. On his forehead was a stamp that read property of Rias Gremory, and on his chest in blood red paint was the stylized words Naruto Citri was here. He had his eyes wide open and they were searching around the room as if he was still getting attacked. In the end, Rias had to cast a spell on him that put him to sleep. Naruto, why did you have to scare my pawn? Now I have to seal this part of his memories. She whined as he gained an amused look at the scene. Kaneko dropped Issei rather roughly, leaving Kiba to sit him gently on the ground. Leaning against the wall, Rias began to seal the memories while Kaneko and Kiba took their seats on the couch. Kiba next to Naruto and Kaneko across from the two. Rias went to her, sit behind her desk with Akano standing behind her as they stayed in silence waiting for Issei to wake up. Naruto completing homework, Kiba fiddling with his swords, Kaneko her sweets, and Asia looking at Issei with worry evident in her eyes. When Issei started shuffling, Naruto snapped his fingers and all evidence of the greeting disappeared. Issei opened his eyes and looked around. First he noticed a worried Asia and flashed her a smile which seemed to calm her. He looked and noticed Kaneko ignoring him. Kiba looked at him and smiled before going back to his sword. Akano was blushing and biting on her finger. Rias looked annoyed and was glaring in front of her. When he looked in the same direction and saw the black-haired enemy of all males at Kuo Academy, Naruto Shitori, Issei was plain confused. This was a club for devils, so what was he doing here?
Naruto-senpai. What are you doing here? Naruto suddenly gained an amused look in his eye and seemed to be thinking on something. After a couple seconds he changes his posture, and he crossed his legs, one over the other, and folded his hands over his lap, intertwining his fingers. His left eye seemed to shimmer before a monocle appeared, with a gray beard appearing on his upper lip and his hair on top of his head shimmering before turning gray.
You see, young Issei, I am Rias-chan's father in disguise. Z's. His sentence was cut by his head falling back and him starting to snore. Rias gained a tick mark at the other pure-blooded devil in the room. She sent out a pulse of power that shook the room and made the sleeping devil jolt awake. Huh. What? He looked around, spinning his head rapidly. When he focused on a non-believing Issei, he huffed and got rid of the costume. Rias then cut in to hurry up their introductions. Issei, this is Naruto Citri, a pure-blooded devil, just like me. A look of understanding ran across his face, but he was still wary around his sworn enemy. Rias wore a triumphant smirk as Naruto glared at her, but Naruto's glare turned into a smirk and Rias felt a headache coming. I am also the fiancé of Rias Gremory and Akano Hamejima. His declaration shocked Issei to the core. Rias saw this coming, as did Akano, but both were still left blushing. But to Issei this took one of his major dreams away from him. He couldn't touch those heavenly mounds. Now Naruto had the smirk on his face, and it was Rias' turn to glare. Now she had to comfort her perverted servant. Bucko, is it true? Say it's not true. Now I can't touch those opai. Issei asked while crying comically. Everyone could only sweat drop at the perverted boy's one-track mind. Issei, as of right now he isn't my fiancé, Rias stated calmly, but also looking at Naruto through the corners of her eyes, whose smirk at the unspoken part riser first. She looked at a smiling Issei. Issei then started glaring at Naruto. Senpai, you'll just have to touch her opai before you can. Naruto's sweat dropped and Rias smirk at the fires burning in Issei's eyes. Naruto was already giving him determination even if he didn't know it. The glaring contest came to an end by Rias making her presence known. Now that you two are being civil, we have more pressing matters to deal with. With that, Naruto was officially made an important part of Issei and Asia's lives, even if they didn't know it yet. Time skip nighttime, Naruto's room. A flash of red entered Naruto's field of vision and he smirked. Rias emerged out from the circle in her nightgown, also donning a smirk. He watched as she climbed under the bed with the ever-present smirk on her face. After they both were under the covers they waited, but they didn't have to wait long. As another magic circle lit up where Rias was, not wasting another moment, Naruto quickly positioned himself over top of Rias. When the light died down, Graphia quickly stepped out of the magical circle and had a shocked expression on her face. Naruto-sama, Rias-sama, what are you doing? The two teens looked at her in mock fright and shock, but that stopped when they both stopped being able to contain their laughter. The two were laughing even harder at seeing the confused face of Graphia. Naruto threw the cover off of them, allowing Graphia to see their fully clothed bodies. She let a sigh go and gave the two a brief glare. Naruto-sama, Rias-sama, it is not nice to prank people. With each word the temperature of the room got colder and the two started to sweat despite the chill. They gulped and nodded, leaving a stoic Graphia with an amused glint in her eye. Naruto watched as Rias left with Graphia staying a little longer. Leaving. He turned to sleep, getting the message from the actions of Graphia. Tomorrow is going to be interesting. I wonder how Issei will react to the fried chicken. Mwahahaha. Naruto. Go to bed. The screams of Bova echoed through the house. Naruto rolled over with a smile on his face. He loved his life. Line break. Naruto was currently watching Issei and Kiba arrive to the old school building after school. He had arrived earlier, skipping his last class, because of his excitement. He was planning on sitting in on the meeting as well, and as a high-class devil it was imperative he had his queen with him. Riser didn't know about Valerie. As a matter of fact, no one outside of the Cetres, Gremories, and Satans knew about her. They didn't want the fact that a young devil had a servant with a Longinus, let alone one of the three holy relics, to be released to the public. Not only would it make Valerie a target, but it would also anger the church. But in case of a leak, Naruto had proceeded to get Valerie to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a way to protect herself. While he himself preferred a more Asian-style martial art like karate, he figured Jiu-Jitsu would be better since it was better for ground fighting, since the only time he expected Valerie to fight was if she was either chased, or someone got past her magic. Valerie was currently in the clubroom with Akano and Rias preparing for the meeting. She was in a skirt that stopped mid-thigh, with a cloak that started from her waist and ended below her knees, with a top piece that covered only her shoulders. On her arms and legs were sleeves that donned the Cetri family crest, and she had on combat boots, as soon as Knights of the Blood Oath uniform, with the Cetri crest instead of the cross. He got the idea from his favorite anime, Sword Art Online. He removed the cross and added his family crest. He liked the way it showed her figure that seemed to have the beauty of both human and vampire, and she thought it looked good too. He got up when he noticed the last of Rias' peerage, Sans Gasper, was in the room. He arrived just in time to see an annoyed Graphia holding a fan over a groaning Issei. Not taking long to realize what had happened, he quickly got in Issei's face. The girls were surprised by this actions. Had Naruto grown that protective of Graphia? Hey, the only people allowed to ogle Gray-chan is me and Ni-sama. The girl's sweat dropped and Graphia eyebrow twitched. Naruto yelped when he felt the fan make contact with the back of his skull. He sent a questioning look towards Graphia. What was that for Gray-chan? He was hit again. Must I remind you, Naruto-sama, to act as a high-class devil, and that I am a married woman? Rias could only sigh. Every time they met it was like this. She reprimanded him for calling her Gray-chan and hitting on her, but he made it his personal mission to replace Searsex. You should behave. Before I ask Sona-sama to give you extra lessons in etiquette. He quickly shot up and ran behind Rias, pointing at Graphia. You wouldn't dare. His words were spoken with true fear lacing them, as if he was given a fate worse than death, which for him it was. Make it known Naruto never has and never will like school. Their back and forth could not continue as Rias started pinching on Naruto's cheek, making him wince in pain. Now Naruto, if you are done with your banter, we can get down to the problem at hand. Rias spoke with a stern voice that sent shivers up Naruto's spine. Naruto sat straight up and still like a doll, surprising Issei that his bucko could control another devil. Just goes to show how awesome she was. Bucko. Did you say problem? Issei responded, leading to Rias going silent. As if trying to find the right words, Graphia stepped up and looked at Rias. Oju-sama, would you like me to explain the situation? Rias looked at her and shook her head, not even contemplating the offer of the silver-haired maid. She gathered her thoughts and opened her mouth to speak but was cut off by the light of a magical circle. Issei and Asia looked plain confused while the others tensed slightly. Naruto and Rias looked annoyed while Graphia still had on the poker face. Valerie and Akano were in the kitchen and finishing the tea if the rattling coming from the kitchen were anything to go by. When the light died down, Riser Fenix stood there in all his doucheness. It was honestly depression to Naruto to see an arrogant man like him. Issei on the other hand was in a little awe. Phew, it's been a while since I came to the humans world. The guy looks around the room, and then smirks after finding Bucko. My lovely Rias. I came to see you. He sent a distasteful look towards Naruto, then looked back to Rias. Now then, Rias, let's go and take a look at the ceremony hall. The date of the ceremony is decided, so we need to check it before then. He went to grab Rias' arm, but Naruto was suddenly between the two of them with a smirk on his face. Era Riser-kun. I must say I don't like guys. See, you will have to take my rejection. When you go back, tell Lady Fenix I say what's up. Naruto spoke in a cheeky tone that seemed to piss off this Riser, but he breathed in before turning away towards a giggling Rias. Rias, come, let's go. He spoke in a commanding tone that set off red flags for Issei. After an uninterested response by Riser, Issei looked as though his ego had been destroyed. Oh yeah? Well, who are you? Issei spoke in an angry voice. Rias, you didn't tell them about me. That's mean, Hyodo Issei-sama. Why yes, this person is Razor Phoenix-sama. He's a pure-blood high-class devil, and the third son of the House of Phoenix. Graphia-san explains in her usual monotone voice, and he is the husband of the next heiress of the House of Gremory. He is engaged to Oju-sama. Issei really did deflate. His body floated to the ground like a piece of paper picked up in the wind. This guy, marrying Bucko. Now I have to get past him and Naruto. How could I do that? No, I can't think like that. I will touch those oppai, and with that he immediately inflated with a perverted leer on his face. As the others watched Issei get his emotions together, Valerie and Akeno came out with the tea. Rias sits on the couch near the edge while Naruto sat at Rias' usual seat. Riser sat next to Rias and was constantly grabbing her shoulder. Issei was shocked that Naruto sat back and acted calm. He nearly jumped on the guy, but a firm hand by Kaneko kept him from jumping out. Valerie only gave tea to the servants and Naruto before taking a position behind Naruto. Riser's eyes following her until they refocused on Akeno. Everything about this guy spoke UAL harassment. Like he was gonna say something dumb like grab him by the pussy. But Naruto never glared or challenged Riser, and it was calling Issei. Riser's eyes focused on Valerie after the tea had been served, and Akeno went to the kitchen to prepare more tea just in case. Valerie took the stair until it slipped low, and it was the only place he was looking. She squirmed a little and Naruto noticed his queen's distress. He leveled Riser with a firm glare. Riser-kun, if you appreciate those eyes you will stop staring at my queen. Fenix or not. Riser recoiled a little at Naruto's voice and gaze. Riser returned with one of his own. This is your queen. I wonder, is she weak? Riser spoke in a voice so haughty Naruto almost laughed at his questions. Is his queen strong? She holds a damn Longinus, and she can gain the abilities of those she sucks the blood from. She must be a strong queen and weak king. Don't go together. Naruto looks amused and Valerie a little nervous. The attention was on her. Naruto added a smirk which all in the room except Riser had seen before. Valerie, are you thirsty? Naruto played with his collar, giving her a look. Riser, Asia, and Issei thought this was a harmful action, but the others knew what he was doing, and he said he didn't like gloating. Valerie started blushing at seeing his neck and unconsciously started dropping her jaw, showing her fangs a little. And no thank you, Naruto. Naruto grabbed her arm and looked her dead in the eye. Nonsense. No need to be shy, you can have a drink whenever. He looked back at Riser and tilted his head, creeping him out. But before Riser or Issei could bring up their questions, Valerie began drinking from Naruto's neck. Asia and Riser discovered her pieces right there, but Issei was a little on the slow side. A vampire. Riser spoke in shock. Almost all devils would love to get their hands on a vampire. It was especially true since vampires threw out almost all children with even an ounce of human blood. Naruto inwardly smirked. That will teach you not to doubt my queen. Valerie, sigh. Drink however much you want. She told him his blood was delicious, like a sweet flavor, but he never understood it. When she started, she wouldn't stop drinking for a few minutes. Stop it already. Razor. I told you before. I will not marry you. Suddenly Rias explodes on Riser. But Riser tried to explain the situation with logic but was nowhere near convincing Rias. Graphia was still just standing by, and Naruto was tensing. Riser made no attempt to stop, and knowing Riser, it was only a minute before the situation got out of hand. But I won't marry you, Riser. I will marry the one I acknowledge. Even the devils from the old noble house have the right to choose. Rias looks toward Naruto briefly, seeing that. Riser suddenly becomes enraged. His eyes become sharper and he even makes a noise with his tongue. You know, Rias, I am also a devil who carries the name of House of Phoenix behind me. I can't let that name get tarnished. I didn't even want to come to a small old building like this in the human world. Rather, I don't like the human world that much. The fire and wind of this world is filthy. For a devil like me who rules fire and wind, I can't stand it. Fire erupts from Riser's body. The temperature rises so high that some of the lesser devils were struggling to breath. I will take you back to the underworld, even if I have to burn all of your peerage. Naruto simply rolled his eyes at the show of force. He let out a bit of his powers to make the room bearable for Asia and Issei, who were struggling to breath. Oju-sama, Riser-sama, please calm down. If both of you were to continue, then I won't be quiet about it. For Sears-Sama's honor, I won't hold back. Rias and Riser both paled at Greyfie's voice that cut through the intense atmosphere like a knife through butter. Riser calms the flames around his body and sighs while shaking his head. To be told that by the strongest queen, even I would be scared. I definitely wouldn't want to fight the people from Sears-Sama's group, which is known to be made up of monsters. Naruto snickers before cupping his hands over his mouth. She just pimped you. Riser almost lost his cool again while a subtle twitch could be seen on Greyfie's brow. Naruto proceeded to skip out on the next part as he already had an idea of what it would be, a challenge between Rias and Riser for her freedom. He couldn't care less about the details, so he was waiting for this part to be over. Greyfie confirmed the rating game. Naruto looked at Riser with a smirk. He knew what would happen. Riser was going to get all cocky on them. It really amused and disgusted Naruto at the same time. The moment Greyfie finished her bow, Riser proceeded with being, Riser. Hey, Rias, would the ones here be your servants? Riser asked in a cocky voice that amused Naruto. He gestured to the couch with all the members of Rias' peerage on it. Yesin. Riser snapped his fingers, bringing his peerage out. The 15 girls stepped out of the light. As they looked around the room, the first thing they noticed was the crying mess known as Issei. Naruto watched on in disgust as Riser kissed his girls and gloated to Issei. He sent a victorious smirk towards Naruto, who raised an eyebrow at the action. Riser seemingly got smugger as Naruto made no move and the smirk got wider. Issei suddenly activated his boosted gear and pointed at Riser in anger. A womanizer like you isn't good enough to be with Bucko. Huh. Weren't you looking up to the so-called womanizer? Issei looked guilty but determined after Riser gave his response. Shut up. That's different with the thing about Bucko. Naruto had to groan. He had the feeling he would have to set Issei up with someone else at this rate, or he would be in this strange place with Rias. Heroes love women. That's a saying in the human world, right? A good phrase indeed, but this is just a close relationship with my servants. Aren't you also adored by Rias? Issei looked conflicted. He was right. Naruto was laughing at their back and forth. Hero my ass. You are just a bird guy. Firebird Phoenix. Ha ha ha. That's the same as Yakitori. Issei's provocation seemed to work as Riser's face shifted to pure fury. Yakitori. Why you low-class devil? Don't get ahead of yourself. That's not the way you talk to a high-class devil. Rias, what's going on with your discipline towards your servants? Rias rolled her eyes and looked towards Akano. Riser's fury starts to rise more as Issei continues his taunting. Ma, Riser, let's just calm down. Naruto tried to step in before Issei embarrassed himself, but it didn't work. The taunting went back and forth. In the end he settled for a sigh. Issei suddenly got in a battle stance. Mira, do it. Riser looked as his servant knocked Issei out of it with one hit of her staff. You have an invincible sacred gear, but are weak with it. Riser paused for meant as if gathering his thoughts. But the match would be interesting if you were to get used to it. Riser put his hand on his chin, and it seems like he thought of something. Rias, how about we have a match in 10 days? We could do it now, but that wouldn't be interesting. Are you giving me a handicap? Are you against it?
Is it humiliating? A rating game isn't something simple that you can win with only your feelings. If you can't use your servant's power to the fullest, then you will lose immediately. So it's not weird for you to train with your servants for your first rating game. I have seen devils who lost without using their power to the fullest countless of times. No matter how great their potential and power was, Rias doesn't complain and listened quietly to what Riser said.
Riser directs his palm towards the ground, and a magic circle starts to glow. 10 days, if it's you, then you should be able to improve your servants. He then looks at Issei. Don't be a disgrace to Rias. Rias, pawn. Your blow is Rias' blow. With that, Riser left the room and Naruto rolled over in laughter. Nothing like some fried chicken to make your day. Naruto looks over towards the peerage of Riser that were about to teleport away. Revel-chan, can you come here for a moment? The girl with drills steps off the magic circle with a blush on her face. I told you not to call me Chan, Naruto-sama. She seemed to get really mad. No, you told me not to call you Drill-chan, not Revel-chan. Besides, I told you not to call me Sama. Naruto looks over at Issei and Asia. Now children, he spoke in a chiding tone. Don't be mean, say hi to the nice Phoenix. The name Phoenix seemed to throw red flags for Issei. But Asia went straight over and bowed at the devil. Issei. What are you doing? Riser is the only asshole in that peerage. The girls just happen to be loyal. And Revel is at Tsunere. Revel blushed at Naruto's classification and Issei gained a lewd expression. What is it you want, Naruto-sama? Naruto crouched in the corner with a gloomy expression. Naruto-sama. It's almost like she actually hates me. Everyone had to sweat drop. Naruto is spending too much time with Searsex. Naruto-sama? She spoke each syllable in a hesitant voice. His emotions greatly confused everyone. Revel-chan. He grabbed her by the shoulders and looked her in the eyes. You need a boyfriend. How about Issei? He's single, has almost no appeal, and he wants a harem. Think about it. You and Asia over their harem sisters. Actually, that would be a good TV show. Naruto grabbed Valerie and started a magic circle. Come on, Valerie. We're going to see Ka-tan. And with that he teleported away, leaving two red-faced bishops, a red-faced pawn, a giggling queen, and king, and a silent rook. What do you mean I am the weakest devil you've ever seen? Issei was angry. Naruto was listing his faults in an attempt to train him. Issei was able to take it, but Naruto called him the weakest devil ever. It was the worst thing anyone ever said to him. It angered him. But what made it worst was it was probably true. You heard me. Even Asia is stronger. If I put you in a fight and she actually fought, you would be destroyed. She is better in magic, support, and defense. Right now, you haven't even talked to your sacred gear. Issei looked confused. Don't tell me you haven't talked to Diedrich, the Welsh dragon, that is sealed in your arm, since your dream. Issei still looked confused. What do you mean sealed in my arm? Issei's eyes lit up in recognition. Before disbelief, you mean it was in my arm? Ha 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 ha. This is priceless. Who did you think is giving you your power when you boost? Naruto was getting a laugh out of this, but the tone in his voice was like one talking to a child. It made Issei feel as though he was a little brother. Naruto calmed himself and his face relaxed. Issei took this as a time to respond. I thought all sacred gears came from God. Issei gained a confused yet thoughtful look. He always assumed that God distributed his powers to the sacred gears. But you're a devil. God is your sworn enemy. Why would he help you? Also, there's thousands, if not millions of twice criticals. So are you saying God boosts those too? Don't make me laugh. But instead of laughing at you, I should probably fix your issues. Naruto gained a thoughtful look. You have no stamina, speed, power, magical skulls, sacred gear skull, or drive. Naruto mumbled to himself, but he was still loud enough for Issei to hear. I know. For your training you will do an exercise. This should be able to increase your skulls all at once, out of me, Satan, and Rias. I am the best with barriers. I am also good with illusions. Naruto then pushed Issei away from him. Issei. This training is simple. Over there, he pointed a few feet to the right. In a previously empty spot a shower appeared. Is your target. I will put a cage of solid ice around the shower. Your job is to break through the ice. Issei looked as though he was about to refuse to take part in this regimen, but before he could denounce the training, Rias walked over in nothing but a towel. She walked towards the ice, which melted and allowed her to get in the shower, and then reformed. The reformed ice grew opaque and Issei heard the shower cut on. Issei, would you help me clean my breast? Rias spoke through the ice that was covering her form. While the voice would have been read as false due to the extremity of the situation. Issei was a giant pervert. As a pervert he ran on his fetish, and that word breast made him want to see the other side of ice. He immediately gained a lewd expression before running and attempting to punch the wall. When his fist hit the ice he immediately started thrashing in pain. He glared at a smirking Naruto, and was about to yell at him when the ice wall sprouted a hand that punched him, making him fly away 20 feet. He flew into another ice wall as hard as cement. Now if I may finish, cue glare from Issei. This is a simple exercise. Your target is the bath. If you get there you will get to help Rias shower. If not I will. The ice surrounding it is as hard as 20 feet of iron. It was a lie. It was only as thick as a few ice cubes. But if Issei did manage to break it he would have a morale boost. The ice will attack you if you stay within 5 feet of it for more than 10 seconds. When you aren't in those 5 feet, it'll attack you. Issei paled when Naruto started exerting his pressure. Mwahahahahaha. Rias has left you in my care for 6 days. 4 before the rating game. You will get 2 breaks, for breakfast and dinner. But other than that, just don't stop moving around. And with that he kicked off and went after Issei. Time skip 10 hours later, 8:30 p.m. Day 1, Issei was currently resting. It was currently his dinner period. Akeno came with the plate for food and some tea. Naruto honestly expected Asia. Akeno gave Issei and Naruto their food and drink before seating next to Naruto, who had his back turned to Issei. To Issei it was a harmless gesture, but if he looked closer he would see the moving of their jaws. Naruto. Rias asked that you don't harm Issei too bad. She would like to continue his magic training after this, but she can't if he's too tired. Akeno spoke in a hushed tone too low for Issei to hear. I can't make any promises. If she wants his training complete it will have to be done my way. If he can't take it, then he should NT have been sent to me at all. She looked ready to retort, but the look on Naruto's face showed he was not backing down. Tell her that I'll add in a night break so he can sleep. That should be enough for him to practice magic. I'll tell her, Naruto-kun. Akeno flashed a smile but was met with a stoic face from Naruto. She got up and collected the plates and cups before leaving. Akeno, breakfast is 8:30. She nodded and continued walking off. Now pervert, break time's over. Time skip 5 days later, day 6, beep beep. The sound of an alarm ringing sounded through the field. Issei could not hear due to his screams, but Naruto heard it clearly and smirked. Issei-kun, you only have 10 minutes, if you don't hurry I'll have to help Rias bathe. Issei couldn't even get to the ice earlier in their training. He was too busy trying to run from Naruto. The one time he got close enough, a dragon tail made from ice appeared on the cage and he unconsciously hesitated and he was thrown by the ice. Issei, where are you? My boobs need to be cleaned. With those words, Issei shot up like a rocket. He gained a determined look. Any signs of fatigue disappeared and he brought out his sacred gear. He shot towards the cage of ice and winded his arm back. He struck the ice and watched as a crack formed. It was thin but it was still present. When he was about to punch again he was flung by a rope of ice. When he landed he was forced to duck a spear of ice being thrown at him. He bent his knees and launched at the ice, but before he hit the spot he cracked earlier his ankle was grabbed and he was thrown. He heard an alarm going off. Naruto-kun, can you come wash my chest for me? Issei took too long. Issei broke in tears and watched as the ice and Rias was destroyed in a ball of destruction. He saw a furious-looking Rias standing there with a twitching eyebrow. Naruto, is there a reason you used me for this demonstration? Rias looked furious. Naruto began sweating and backed away slowly from the fuming redhead. Usually guys don't want the girl they like to been seen naked by another man. But I've seen a lot of girls naked, including Graphia. The twitching of her eyebrow, and her power increased. I mean, you are the most beautiful girl I know? The pressure increased before disappearing altogether. Good choice in words. Rias walked over and grabbed the dazed and exhausted Issei before walking away. Line break. So, what is his power level now? Rias, Naruto, Valerie, and Akeno were sitting in a room drinking tea. It was the day before the rating game. They spent the day touching up on strategies for the game. Tomorrow would be used for mental and physical rest in preparedness for the game. As you know, I did the Mirage training. To say he struggled was an understatement. His speed was low, and his power was tremendously low. I would have at least expected one of his arms to be acceptable. But Issei was able to fracture the ice. It was a hairline fracture but fractured nonetheless. If I had to put him anywhere it would be a mid-low class. He was still extremely weak. All of Rias' other pieces were mid-class in their areas of expertise. Issei was exponentially stronger than he was before, but 2 cubed was only 8. If Issei was 8, Riser was 64. He couldn't hope to do any damage to Riser unless he sold his arm to the dragon inside of him and hit him with a bottle of holy water. But knowing him, that's probably first on his to-do list. Unless he hasn't made some perverted magical spell yet. It wasn't a lie. Issei might have gotten stronger, but it was not much since he only had 6 days. If he had a month instead, Issei might have been able to grow. But he didn't have that kind of time. But hey, he had fun. Got to play a few pranks too. He gave Issei breakfast, dinner, and 4 hours a night to sleep. Each break a new prank was set up. But it helped Issei's situation awareness technically, so one could say he was still doing his job. You're welcome to stay with us the last 2 days. Rias and Akeno got up and left the room, leaving just Naruto and Valerie. Valerie-chan, you felt Riser's power, right? A nod was his answer. Do you think they can win? Valerie went into a thinking pose. She knew about the Phoenix from her time with the vampires and a little bit more after becoming Naruto's queen. She felt Riser's power and knew Rias from a previous spar. She pursed her lips. If I had to say, no. Naruto frowned at her answer but allowed her to finish. While they are all strong, Riser has quantity. His pieces might not be as strong as Rias, but he can dwindle their stamina. Not only that, but Riser is a little stronger than Rias, so she might not be able to win unless Akeno is still able to fight with her when she needs to fight Riser. He nodded at her assessment. He could not find any fault in her explanation. So I probably will have to fight him. It was not bad but not good. He wanted to let Rias handle this and not show any moves. Now he might have to think of something new before he had to fight Cyraorg again. Though I am thinking about showing off my queen. He wiggled his eyebrows, suggestively eliciting a blush from Valerie. What does that mean? She couldn't help but stammer. He inwardly smirked at her reaction and decided to continue. He leaned in closer until his face was only a few inches from hers, making her blush more heavily, and unconsciously lean in. It means I want to show others my beautiful queen. She was really blushing. He moved closer to where they were almost touching. He suddenly shifted his head and blew air in her eye before running off giggling. Maybe in the future, my queen, but for now you have to wait. He added emphasis on the word queen. He laughed even harder. Line break, it's my loss. I resign. Rias' voice echoed through the TV. This was the rating game. Naruto was watching it live. Him and Sona were just sitting in silence for a minute. The match was close. The beginning played out as it was supposed to. If she had another piece or two, she might have won. They defeated the pieces in the gym and were moving only for the queen to make her move. The deciding factor was Akino's defeat. If the bomb queen would have retired, Asia could have healed Akino, and the final battle would have probably been different. Issei was noticeably better, in all aspects, since Akino helped him in magic during the last 2 days. Rias, after the defeat of Akino, decided to fight Riser. Issei foolishly attacked one-on-one and was threatened. Rias couldn't sit by and let her pawn be cowed, so she resigned, though they probably should have told Issei that Rias had one more chance. After all, Naruto wasn't gonna let Riser marry Rias. It was like how he beat the crap out of the person who was engaged to Sona, made him accept her chess challenge. So, looks like you will have to make the challenge for her hand? It was more of a statement than a question. She gave it her best, but she was not strong enough. No, she was strong enough, and her plan was good, but her plan was not good enough. She left some major flaws. The beginning was good, but she was ill-prepared for the bomb queen and the Phoenix tears. Not only that, but Issei fought with his emotions and not his brain. I am gonna have to beat it out of him. He gained an evil glint in his eye that seemed to make Sona shiver a little. Akino is rubbing off on him. Sona could only hope her assumption was wrong. So, you're gonna reveal Valerie? I've been thinking about it for some time. Ka-tan and Nisama have given their approval, but I have to ask Valerie-chan. It will be her who will have the spotlight on her. Bova already thinks we should present her. Hopefully I won't get too many trade offers if we go through with it. He looked towards the screen as they did a close-up of a smirking Riser. Line break, Valerie-chan. I have been given the option of introducing you to the underworld, but I have decided to let you decide. She looked surprised but calmed as she looked at his face. She looked ready to speak but was met with a hand by Naruto. If I tell the public who you are, the church will probably after you, as will the fallen angels. They will come for you not just because of your sacred gear. You are the queen of a high-class devil, who is also the son of a Satan. If we do this, you will have a target as big as the Satans. The look in Naruto's eye showed the severity of the situation. I am not sure. She began to mutter a little low. I am not as strong as you, let alone the Satans. What if they came for me? What if the Teps faction find out about me? They forced me to use it. I could hear the voices. They went away. But what if they come back? Naruto could hear the fear in her voice as she spoke of her old home. It was as if she went cold in her bones. It made Naruto sad to see her in such a stare. Naruto hugged her. He squeezed to reassure her before his reply. If they come for you, they'll have to go through me and Bova. And I know Gasper will give them hell to pay too. He spoke in a confident voice that made a warmth stir inside of her. As long as I am around, no one will get you. If I get any trade proposals, I'll throw them away and won't give those old coots the satisfaction of me looking at them. He let her go and flashed her a smile. With me here, you'll never have to worry about anyone trying to harm you. He gave her a thumbs up and continued to smile. He was caught off guard when she hugged him but got over it quickly before hugging back. She pulled back and looked him in the eyes. I'll do it, he smiled back. Line break. It was a well-known fact that the son of Serafall Leviathan, Naruto Citri, was unofficially courting Rias Gremory. The only reason they weren't officially engaged was that Lord Gremory made the Phoenix marriage contract years before either's birth. If Lord Gremory knew Serafall would have a child, he probably wouldn't have made the contract. He assumed that since the old Satan faction was still launching guerrilla attacks occasionally, she wouldn't have a child anytime soon. The death of Minato Namikaze was considered a stain in the history of the underworld. It was because of the attack that the birth of Milika's Gremory was left a secret until Grafia was back at 100% after birth. The only ones that knew if Grafia's pregnancy was the Gremorys, Citris, and Satans. But Naruto's birth meant that the boy and the Gremory heir had a high chance of falling in love. The two families were close. When the rating game between Rias and Riser went in Riser's favor, everyone knew a challenge for Rias' hand would be made. Knowing that this played on Riser's pride, everyone knew the challenge would be accepted. So here they were in the ballroom of the Gremory Castle. If Riser won, this would be a wedding. If Naruto won, this would be an engagement party. So right now the adults were putting in bets. The odds were in Riser's favor. Riser was seen as older and more experienced of he two. Even with the fact Naruto was the Leviathan's son, Riser was more experienced and had the Phoenix bloodline. The only thing the people knew was there was a challenge. No one knew whether it was a rating game or one-on-one battle. The people wanted a rating game, because Naruto's queen was a mystery. But they knew it was most likely a one-on-one battle. They watched as Riser entered the ballroom with his queen behind him, in their usual outfits. On the other side, Naruto appeared with his queen in tow. They looked at her in awe. She looked around 19 or 20 and was very beautiful. Whilst Naruto was in his Sage of Six Paths kimono, his queen wore her Asuna outfit. In the middle, Sirzex stood with Graphia behind him. When they made it to the middle, Sirzex began his introduction. Welcome, devils of the underworld. Today is the day of the challenge between Naruto Citri and Riser Phoenix for the hand of Rias Gremory. We will now set the rules. With that, Sirzex looked at the two boys glare at each other. The air around Naruto was cold, while the air around Riser was hot. Everyone felt no change with the temperature offsetting. The choices are a full rating game or King versus King battle. Riser-kun, your choice. It does not matter. I will not lose, so it does not matter. He spoke with his nose up in a cocky tone. Lord and Lady Phoenix sighed. Naruto-kun? All eyes turned to Naruto. He looked unfazed by their curious faces. I don't have enough time for a rating game as I have school, plus I don't need Valerie-chan to fight Riser. So one-on-one. Sirzex looked back to Riser, who had the power to overturn, seeing as he was defending in this challenge. He looked as if he was going to talk, so Sirzex sat back. Scared to have your queen fight? The look Naruto and Sirzex had told him the taunt would backfire. No. But why would I need an experienced Longinus user to take you down? Gasp could be heard around the room. Riser looked shocked. Sirzex smirked as he looked at each face, while Serafall growled at the greedy faces in the crowd. The attention was on Valerie, who looked nervous, understandably. Era. Did I forget to introduce my cute queen? Allow me to introduce her then. Meet Valerie Tepes, Dampier and wielder of the Longinus Sephiroth Grawl. To say Naruto was amused was an understatement. If it wasn't for the fact he had to uphold his image, he would have laughed and probably rolling in the ground trying to catch his breath. The faces of the older devils was funny. Rias, who was in the corner, really was laughing. She was with just Akano, as the newer members in the peerage was still recovering from the rating game and Kiba and Kaneko were still injured. Sirzex, wanting to get this over with, quickly confirmed all the rules and sent the two to the arena they would fight in. It would be a one-on-one fight with no items allowed. The two chose a basic rule set. The arena was simple. It was a giant valley, a waterfall in the background, with a little pond, and a couple of bushes. The two stood and waited. When the bell to begin rang, Naruto watched as Riser opened his mouth. Why not stop this fight, little Citri? You use ice, I use fire. That's my advantage, and with my Phoenix blood you have no chance. Riser spoke while lighting his wings in a show of force. Naruto did not bat an eye and calmly released his pressure. You know you should nt get cocky during a fight. Besides, a giant pillar of water shot up, surprising Riser. If you didn't forget, us Citris prefer water. The pillar collapsed on Riser before freezing, leaving just his head out. Also, my ice is the ice of the Leviathan, so don't underestimate it. Riser seemed to be angered and his powers rose. The ice was melted and he landed on the ground. He sent a ball of fire only for the melted ice to rise as water and snuffed out the fireball. Riser ran forward with his fist on fire. As he swung, Naruto ducked and flipped around his fist. Naruto returned a fist, and when it hit Riser's shoulder, ice encased the spot that was hit. Riser let out a growl and blew the ice off. He charged at Naruto and hit him with a fist shrouded in flames. He continued his punches. He backed off for a minute, expecting and knocked out Naruto. When the smoke settled, there was no Naruto. All that was in his place was broken shards of ice. Riser, in a fit of rage, launched wave after wave of flames into the surrounding area. Come on out, Ice Boy. The longer you delay this, the more embarrassed you will be. At the end of his rant, he released his wings. He took to the air and looked around for his missing opponent. He began shooting random fireballs towards random bushes and rocks in the surrounding area. Riser growled in frustration and raised his power. Riser flew around the board until he was directly over the pond. Water shot out in tentacles, attempting to grab the Phoenix, who twisted in the air in order to dodge. He threw a ball of fire at the tentacle, causing it to disperse. When the water fell back into the pond, Riser felt something impact the back of his head, sending him to the ground. He seemed to have broken his legs and a few ribs, but they were back to normal in a few seconds. Riser got up and let out frustrated growl. As he looked around, all he saw was a white blur and his stomach was impaled with a spear of ice. Riser pulled it out and let his regeneration kick in. You should know by now that you can't harm a phoenix, he spoke angrily and his powers rose in a fit of irritation. Naruto suddenly appeared to his left, then another to his right. Riser launched balls of fire out, melting them both, showing they were ice. You see, you can't beat me. Your ice is useless and my body regenerates. You can't win. More Narutos were popping up and Riser continued to melt them. When he saw one didn't melt, he let out a laugh, finally giving up. Naruto settled for a glare. Riser didn't look phased and continued talking. Give up now and I'll let you remain for the wedding. Naruto didn't answer, just raised his powers, cooling the air. Give up now and I'll let you remain with Rias, Queen. But not until I am done with her. Naruto's power rose even more, but he still did not move. The people at the party were wondering what his plan was. Riser's power started to rise even more. Give up now and I might let you watch on our honeymoon. Naruto still didn't respond. The air continued to grow colder. Riser was about to speak again, but his wings went out. He attempted to light them again, but they wouldn't. Riser glared at the smirking Naruto. What did you do? Naruto started to run forward. When he reached Riser, he cocked his fist back and coated it in water. As he ran, he spoke. Funny thing about fire, it runs on oxygen, so if the oxygen is frozen, the fire won't light. He brought the fist up and hit Riser, making it freeze on contact before pulling back the other and continuing pummeling Riser. This is for forcing Rias into marriage. This is for attempting to call the pervert. This is for all you have said about my friends. And this is for being an asshole. Naruto continued, eventually deforming his face. He continued attacking at blinding speeds, causing damage as fast as he regenerated. Naruto brought both his hands up and formed a giant hammer made from ice. He brought it down on Riser's chest in the ice chip. The shards that chipped off started to spread over Riser, freezing him. Naruto walked back and watched as Riser couldn't get out because he couldn't light a fire. You're finished. That ice sucks your demonic power out. Maybe next time you should underestimate someone with an elemental advantage, or a son of a Satan. Naruto turned around as Graphia announced his victory. Line break. Naruto appeared in a room not too far from the ballroom. He walked the hallway that to the ballroom. When he arrived, the devils assembled clapped for him. Rias immediately started running towards him and Akeno was walking behind her. When Rias was a few feet from him, he disappeared. Rias was confused until she heard the usual era from Akeno. She turned and was met with the scene of Naruto on one knee in front of Akeno, kissing her hand. She gained a tick mark. My sweet Akeno, now you are free. We can finally do what was fated. He spoke dramatically as Akeno placed her free hand on her cheek and started blushing. Those who knew the longest sweat dropped, with the collective thought. I thought he said he would stop flirting with Akeno in front of Rias. They all inwardly shivered, remembering the damage the two caused. After 5 minutes of the girls arguing, Naruto accidentally got hit by a wayward spell, which led to Mama Leviathan coming out. The devil heads and heirs just sighed and left. It was always weird with the Gremories. Thanks for watching.